I thought it would be a fun idea to change it up for once and talk a little bit about what some of my favorite bands and albums are. I often receive comments about my musical taste, and I feel like it's time to put this question to bed, once and for all. I'll be working down from number 10 to 1, obviously, accompanied by some honorable mentions. Some of them were chosen due to nostalgia, some of them I found more recently, so let's do this. Number 10, starting off with probably one of the most controversial albums ever released in the progressive world, Heritage by Opeth. Although I listened to Opeth as a 7-year-old, I kind of forgot about them for some years, and I just found my way back to them in 2014. I really got into Heritage as I had never heard anything like it, and I am not a big fan of harsh vocals, so naturally I gravitated towards Damnation and Heritage, and then later on Pale Communion. So I decided to buy a guitar, and basically I wanted to be a singing guitarist after seeing Opeth. What I like about Heritage is how quiet it can get. Like Famine, I Feel the Dark, Hex Process are very dynamic. While songs like Folklore, The Devil's Orchard are really quite heavy at times. Favorite song from Heritage, I would say Hex Process. Honorable mention goes to Damnation. Also a perfect album, really. Number 9. Here's the band that most people don't know. It's Gazpacho. Although I love most of their discography, I have to go with Soyuz, their album that came out in 2018. I fell in love with their storytelling abilities when I think I accidentally came across a song called Park Bench.
I was burning through a life on fire, and when you breathe you feed the flame.
And the singer's voice is just pure magic to me. He knows that he doesn't have a voice that is really heavy, like very powerful. So he goes for these really melodic lines, and it always works well for some reason. As far as I know, Soyuz isn't just about the Soviet spacecraft, it is mainly about objects that are frozen in time. It's a bit vague, but I kinda like that in music. I like almost every song on the album, but I have to add that Soyuz Out is a masterpiece. My own 11-minute song, Hello 45, was actually slightly inspired by Soyuz Out as well. It basically tells the story of Soyuz 1 and how Vladimir Komarov really had no chance to survive his trip into space. The song is really quite something, and when it eventually, the spacecraft comes crashing down into the earth with the jazz almost like music, it's incredible. So that's definitely my favorite song off of Soyuz. Honorable mention goes to Night, a classic Gazpacho album with arguably one of the best songs called Upside Down. Number 8 is another album that literally nobody knows about. It is The Rain by Kristoffer Gildenlöw. It's a shame that most people only know Kristoffer as the ex-Pain of Salvation bassist, or Daniel's younger brother. Kristoffer prefers to write music that is rather calm. The Rain came out in 2016, and its theme is dementia. Not much is known about the concept for this album, but it seems to be about a man who has to accept that his wife has dementia, and that it will be a painful journey with a very sad but inevitable ending. Now, Daniel Gildenlöw from Pain of Salvation, or Daniel Gildenlöw, if I'm correct, is basically one of my favorite singers of all time. Probably my favorite singer. But Kristoffer has an incredible voice. My favorite song from The Rain is a song called In the Evening, which is probably the most bittersweet song I have ever heard, I think.
And then she opened her big blue eyes. Oh, I just couldn't believe. Childishly grasping.
It is very light and beautiful and yet very sad. The wife is close to being, well, just a human shell at this point. And her husband just tries to remind himself that this is the girl he fell in love with. But it's almost unrecognizable at this point. I would also recommend his first album called Rust. It has some amazing songs. I think I covered Overwinter at some point. The title track is lovely. Has a lot of very nice songs.
Light through my blood, this deceives part with my roots in the ground as this world spinning round.
We've had one controversial opinion and then two pretty much unknown albums. So let's go with something well known. On 7 I have the original 1973 Jesus Christ Superstar musical. Yes, it is an album.
Listen, Jesus, I don't like what I see. All I ask is that you listen to me. And remember, I've been your right-hand man all along. You have set them all.
My mother introduced me to this album very early on, and I'm glad she did. Over the years, I must have seen dozens of versions of this musical, and I've even seen it live twice in 2018 and 19 with Ted Neely, the original singer who played Jesus. And I know Ian Gillan from Deep Purple was the original singer for Jesus, and he was incredible, but Ted Neely really nailed the part, in my opinion.
Why should I die? Oh, why should I die?
And he isn't even the best singer in this cast. I mean, Carl Anderson as Judas. Wow. Every single line he sings is perfect. Always straight from the heart and very convincing. This musical also inspired many artists that we love today. If you think that 46 and 2 by Tool or Home by Dream Theater sound similar, well, go ahead and listen to Heaven on Their Minds.
If you strip away the myth from the man, you will see.
A lot of the instrumentals are very funky and prog rock-ish. It's hard to pick a favorite song, as we all know Heaven on Their Minds and Gethsemane are the two big songs. While I agree, I'd like to say that The Last Supper should be up there. Absolute masterpiece.
One of my 12 chosen will leave to betray me.
Cut out the dramatics, you know very well who.
Why don't you go do it?
You want me to do it?
Hurry, they are waiting.
If you knew why I do it,
I don't care why you do it.
to think I admired you. Well, now I despise
despise you, liar!
Honorable mention goes to the musical Hair from 1979. Very different, but also really good.
He's a genius, genius. I believe in God, and I believe that God believes in Korn. That's me. That's me.
In 2017, Godspeed You Black Emperor releases a record called Luciferian Towers. And it seems to be very different compared to the earlier albums. When I discovered the 22-minute long song Static through a Patreon request, I didn't know what to do with myself. Like, I genuinely felt like I had some sort of out-of-body experience through that song.
Most High God, you will believe you're mad. You will believe you've gone insane. But I tell you, if you follow the secret window and you die to the ego nature, you will penetrate this darkness.
After the period of just binging Static whilst staring at the wall, I sort of realized that no other Godspeed You song would ever come close to this experience. Undoing a Luciferian Towers and Anthem for No State actually came quite close to it, and I'll never forget listening to it for the first time. Usually I listen to new music while I'm playing like some sort of video game, but as soon as I noticed that Luciferian Towers would be interesting, I just dropped everything and I just listened, and it definitely ends with a bang. Honorable mention goes to an album called He Has Left Us Alone, but Shafts of Light Sometimes Grace the Corner of Our Rooms by Silver Mount Zion. A ridiculous title, but it's a side project by Godspeed You founder Ephraim. If you want to hear one of the most beautiful pieces ever created, then listen to 13 Angels Standing Guard from the same album. Number 5. I must have been 7 or 8 years old when I started binging my first album. I would sit in my room reading some Dutch comic while listening to Shadows Collide with People by John Frusciante. When I feel really nostalgic, I usually go back to this album. I remember that this one comic had this picture where the main characters all got very old. The family cat got buried in the backyard, and there were now a lot of kids and babies in the foreground. I understood the concept of death, but this would probably be the first time that I started thinking about this subject on my own. And with the combination of John singing Every Person in the background, this became a very strong moment in my youth.
Every day is each day that's passed. Every person alive is everyone who's died.
I was very sad about the picture, and I would sometimes think about these things while the other kids were playing during recess. Listening to this album always brings me back to those times. My favorite song is Cut Out, and it is by far the saddest song on the album, tone-wise.
Your number fix coming along without you. No one shift took place. Your father hopes a wing about you.
Honorable mention goes to The Empyrean which is probably John's best album to this day, but I just prefer Shadows Collide. In the spring of 2019, I meet Radina Dimcheva, who, spoiler alert, ends up becoming one of my best friends very quickly. She ended up singing on both of my solo albums.
You are so untouched, you are unaffected by me.
Anyway, she recommended an artist to me who would eventually change my life. This artist is the Belgian Tamino. At the time, he only had one album called Amir, and I would listen to it every single day. Even when I would get up at like 4:45 to get ready for work, I would listen to Sun May Shine during breakfast and intervals for like the 3-minute trip to work. Tamino is partially Egyptian, and although he writes from the heart, he often ends up writing these very Eastern melodies. His album Amir, which I think is his second name, is probably my most listened to album as of now, and it has inspired me to write my own music. It was this album that really pushed me to finally write music with vocals that were my own vocals, and more importantly, they were songs that really fit my voice type, and not some generic progressive metal instrumental that just didn't work for me. While I will always love the song Indigo Night, because it got me into his music, I think my favorite song is Intervals. Fun fact, Tamino actually owns my latest album, Rolled Into One, which has a song called Tamino. And it's a song about feeling grateful and feeling inspired. Honorable mention goes to a track called A Drop of Blood from Tamino's latest album.
Deep down, sank deep down, till I was part of everything. And in a grain of sand, saw peace and holy land.
We have reached the top 3. Will there be a progressive band? If you've been following me for some years, then you will know which albums I will put on 2 and 1. But let's see if you are ready for the next one. Number 3. For number 3, I am going with Everywhere at the End of Time by The Caretaker. I love ambient music, but this project is something else. Introduced me to a William Basinski track called DLP 1.2 back in January 2022. I liked it so much that I started reading about it more. Now, when you read about the disintegration loops on Wikipedia, you will notice that it says, see also everywhere at the end of time, often compared to DLP. So I started listening and I immediately got hit by what felt like a train of weird nostalgic feelings. I didn't even notice that the album was like 6.5 hours long. All I noticed was how beautiful these sounds were. Everywhere at the End of Time is the final album by Leland James Kirby. as the Caretaker. It is supposed to show you what Alzheimer's disease does to the brain. While some of you only know it as the dementia meme, I'm sure that there are at least a couple of people out there who know how amazing this project really is. I won't spoil the rest, but I can tell you that if you are patient enough, it is definitely worth listening to the whole thing. And while I have some fun memories of all the other Kirby albums, I always come back to Everywhere at the End of Times. Sometimes for comfort, sometimes to feel nostalgic, or sometimes to just turn a regular situation into something very sinister. For example, try listening to F2, Drifting Time Misplaced, while sitting on a bench in a busy train station. It really changes a situation. My favorite memories are, of course, A1, It's Just a Burning Memory, because it just triggers something in the brain. Something that says, like, here we go again, here's the beginning of the end. Enjoy the ride. Another favorite memory is D4, Denial Unraveling. There is nothing scary about it, it's just really beautiful. Honorable mention goes to An Empty Bliss Beyond This World, which is a much shorter album. For those who are not in the mood for stage 4, 5 and 6, which takes an additional 3 hours. Number 2. When is Leo going to mention Tool? Well, no worries, because I am about to. On number 2 we have Lateralus. It is always a battle between 10,000 Days and Lateralus for me. Thing is, I think 10,000 Days would win for me if it was up to nostalgia. That same word I keep using. While I love Ride in 2 and Wings for Marie, I just have to go with Lateralus. It starts off with what I call the heaviest Tool song out there. They didn't need some drop F tuning to make it heavy. And in fact, the bass in the intro plays on the highest string. And still, most of us just get blown away when The Grudge starts. The Patient is beautiful, Schism is annoying but still amazing at the same time. Parable and Parabola are incredible. Even filler song like Ticks and Leeches is really good. I don't listen to the title track often, but deep down I know that it is a great song. And then we arrive at what I see as Tool's ultimate masterpiece, the Holy Trinity. Disposition, Reflection, Triad. While Reflection is the main song, the other two are just as perfect as Reflection.
Mention this to me. Mention something. Mention anything. Mention this to me.
Remember how I mentioned that I felt like I had some sort of out-of-body experience during Static? Well, it was the same thing when I heard Reflection for the first time. As if I was on drugs or something. And then when the drums come in and Triad begins for the second time, you just feel this rush and it is incredible. So yeah, most Tool songs are really good, but for me nothing beats the magic of this 24-minute ending theme. Honorable mention obviously goes to 10,000 Days, but also Anima. I would say it's tied. Then some more honorable mentions. Remedy Lane by Pain of Salvation. Scenes from a Memory by Dream Theater. Out of Myself by Riverside.
As you know, I have always loved you, and I know I will always
13th Step by Perfect Circle.
lost again, broken and weary, unable to find my way.
Boys for Pele by Tori Amos.
Didn't know what love was, so small, couldn't stand it out.
10 by Pearl Jam.
Backstreet lover on the side of the road. I got a bomb in my temple that is gonna explode. I got a 16 gauge buried under my clothes. I played once upon a time. I could control myself.
And finally, Taverns of Azeroth from the World of Warcraft soundtrack. Number 1. Here we go. My favorite album of all time. It is an album that will never fall back to the second place for me. My favorite album of all time is B by Pain of Salvation. Usually I'm not so big on complex concept albums, but this one just felt different for me. It has such a big picture vibe to it that I was just instantly hooked. I wanted to know everything about the album, from the story to the instruments to everything. Now, this isn't the reason why it is my favorite album, but I stumbled across this album when I tried to get into Pain of Salvation. I had only heard Road Saw 2 as a whole for a couple of times, and I just clicked on a random track, and I think it was Nihil Morari or something, and I could not believe what I was hearing. So I decided to spend the entire evening to just listen to B instead of making homework.
Now nothing is left just there's nothing more that we can trade. Or sell. There's nothing wrong because we beat ours.
The next day, I faked being ill at school in order to rush back home to listen to B. I needed to hear Imago again. I needed to read about the concept. I needed to see the live DVD again. B, in a nutshell, is about how mankind just screws up if you give him enough time. So a god is watching this happen from a distance. And then I think there's also like a space probe called Nauticus watching this happen too. It doesn't sound too great, honestly, but the weird thing is that I had no idea that it was such a massive concept when I was listening to it, until I read about it. So during your first listen, you really will just think that the whole album is about mankind's rise and fall. I believe it is also Pain of Salvation's most hated album, or it was anyway. I have never heard anything like B. It is like a mix of progressive metal, folk music, orchestral music, almost like classical, gospel, soul, and so much more. Every song is very different, and Daniel's voice is just too good on this album.
I woke up today to a world devoid of forests and trees, drained of every ocean, every sea, just like a useless brick upon the shore, the morning after the storm.
He plays a mandola on Imago and Nauticus 2, which was another big thing for me. I had no idea what on earth he was playing there. After a lot of research, it turned out to be a custom instrument built by his grandfather. My brother and I found out that the Irish bouzouki actually comes closest to this weird mandola instrument. Not much later, we bought our first Irish bouzouki. The bouzouki became my main instrument on my solo albums. It feels impossible to pick a favorite song from B, but I would have to go with March's Nauticus 2. The song Imago makes a return at the end, which is the most beautiful reprise I have ever heard. Remember Kristoffer Gildenlöw from number 8? Well, that's him playing fretless bass in the background. You can even hear him singing in your left ear at times. B made me realize that I need music in my life, and I think if it weren't for B, I might have not picked up an instrument, and maybe there would be no Leo bass covers, nor just Leo. So this album is massive for me. Thank you for watching, and let me know what you think. Maybe you want to put like a little top 10 in the comments if you would like to.